Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Welcome to episode 10. Very pumped and excited to have you guys here with me today. We're going to be talking about all things recognition in just a few moments. Before we jump into that, I always like to give you guys quick updates on what's been going on with me. So no particular order, starting with music. I'm a huge Summer Walker fan, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I think she is fantastic. I love her voice, and you can catch me listening to Summer Walker probably most days of the week. Most recently, I've been going back to her album, Over It. If you haven't listened to that album, first off, you've been living under a rock. But number two, you're missing out. You better listen to it. You're going to enjoy it. She's got an amazing voice. I love the storytelling she does when she's singing her songs. I love the beats, the instruments, you name it, everything. Big Summer Walker fan. So, been listening to a lot of her recently. And then as far as what I've been watching, I actually found this new show, surprise, surprise, on Apple TV called Platonic. So it's got Rose Byrne and Seth Rogen, along with some other awesome actors. And it's hilarious. Those two people together are one of my favorite combos. I remember seeing them in Neighbors and thought they were just absolutely hilarious. So if you like those actors, if you want a new funny show, highly recommend checking out Platonic on Apple TV. And then last but not least, this is kind of a milestone for the podcast, guys. We're on our 10th episode, believe it or not. And I read a really interesting statistic the other day that basically said 44% of all podcasts never even make it to their 10th episode. So I'm taking that as a win. I'm pumped. I hope you're pumped. And I appreciate you guys continuing to support, tune in, share the podcast with others. Because again, my goal is simple. I want to help folks become the best version of themselves, and I want as many people as possible to hear the strategies and the things that I've learned and hopefully make their careers, their lives a little bit better. So thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. All right, let's dive in. So I always like to start with a why. So why are we talking about recognition? And I really think there's a couple of things that come to mind when I think about why it's so important to talk about it. Number one would be, it was just my favorite routine as a leader, right? I've been in leadership roles over a decade, and something that I have made really, really a big priority in my own leadership and then the culture of my teams is recognition. I know how much this powerful act can mean. I know it can make people happy, it can drive engagement, and it can also increase performance like no other. So I'm just a huge believer of it and something I've been passionate about. I also believe it's a powerful tool. I think people underutilize this tool and they don't know the power in being really, really good at recognition. And then the other thing I think is why it's important to talk about is it's easy to help those around you be better. So using recognition, you can literally make the people around you better, which is something that I think is very admirable and something that's important to me. So for those reasons, I think it's so important to discuss recognition. But anytime we're talking about something like recognition or any new, strategy, tool, act, whatever you want to call it, there's mistakes and there's pitfalls that you can kind of fall into. So I figured it'd be good to kind of start with what are some of those recognition mistakes? And I guarantee you, if you're listening to this, you have seen one of these mistakes in your career, and they're kind of icky. They're not very good when you see these mistakes. So let's get into some of those mistakes, some of those easy pitfalls to fall into, those recognition mistakes that we've probably all seen in our careers at some point. So I think to kick things off, I want to start with not doing it enough, right? And I think with recognition, folks think, well, I did it last quarter. I probably don't need to recognize anybody again till next quarter. Or, hey, they probably got enough recognition from someone else. I don't really think I need to do it. And I think that's a mistake. I think you cannot overdo recognition. And if this isn't happening within your life, within your career on a weekly basis, I think you could take a look and see if maybe you could up your frequency of how often that you're recognizing folks, right? And it reminds me kind of a situation that I was in a while back is, I had a boss and, it was obvious he did not believe in recognition. Myself and his other direct reports, we would go to extreme lengths to add value for him, right? Really to make sure that his department looked good, to make sure that he was set up for success. But no matter what we did, no matter how many hours we put in, how hard we worked, how much value we added, he never really recognized us, right? There was no emails, there was no calls, there was no thank yous, there was no acknowledgement of our efforts. It was almost like he just expected that. And, that's fine, right? You can choose to be that kind of leader, but for me, I don't want to be that kind of leader, right? I want to be recognizing people really frequently so that they don't ever have to wonder where they stand with me or wonder if they're adding value. So not doing enough, big mistake you can make. I think another one is not setting time aside to do this. So for me, I have a trouble sometimes remembering stuff. And right, I get disorganized if I'm not, being strategic about it. So for me, a big thing was setting time aside to recognize people. So I'll get into more later how I do that. But if you're not being strategic and actually scheduling that and just assuming you'll remember, I think that's a mistake as well. So being really, really intentional about your recognition routine is something that I think is really, really important. And we'll talk more about in a minute. Another mistake that I've seen many, many times is not making it sincere. How many times have you heard someone say, hey, you did a good job, or hey, thanks so much for the whole hard work? And, those are fine, right? It's nice that they're saying something, but you're not really sure what they appreciated about what you did. And it's kind of generic. It almost feels insincere in a way. So I think a big way to do that is to really, when you're sitting down, think about the recognition you want to give and be sincere about it. Think about the specifics of why you are appreciating someone, what the direct impact they had was, right? So be specific, because I think that kind of recognition means a lot more to folks. And then the last one I would say is using recognition for bad, right? And hopefully, my hope is you've never seen someone like this, right? That you've never had someone using recognition for bad. But unfortunately, those kind of folks are out there, right? And I've been around those folks. In fact, I remember a leader who I had, and she was what I want to call a master manipulator. She was always trying to manipulate people to get the results that she wanted. And one of the tools that she used for her manipulation was recognition. And so she would use this to dangle carrots in front of people, to manipulate them to do more work that she wanted, right? And I don't think this is the most common thing, but I do think it's important to realize if you're using recognition for selfish reasons, to try to get something, to try to help your own agenda versus literally just trying to celebrate someone else and show them that you appreciate their value, you're making a big mistake. And more importantly, people are going to see through that. So really, really important to kind of remember those 4 key things as you're going through recognition is don't make those mistakes, because they're easy to fall into. But if you're really intentional, you will avoid them and you'll be able to give really, really good recognition. And so what I want to do next is talk about some of my best practices for recognition, because I do think there's some really important things that you make part of your routines when it comes to recognition. Number 1 would be it needs to be sincere, right? We talked a little bit about insincerity, but I think it's really important that you are sincere with your recognition. So again, it's got to be more than the surface level of, hey, great job. Thanks so much for the hard work. Hey, I appreciate you, right? Those are fine, but I think it's really important that it's sincere and specific. So what are the things that this person has done that you appreciate? So for example, if I'm working on a team with someone, they're my colleague, and we're both working on a project, right? And they have been really, really good at the follow-up. Anytime someone reaches out to us for the project, they're responding, they're giving dates, they're holding people accountable. Their follow-up is fantastic, right? So I know about the person, and I could easily just say, hey, want to appreciate your work on the project, and that would be fine. But what I could do is say, hey, Carol, I really want to say thank you for your follow-up. It has been so helpful to know that you are taking care of that, and that our teammates, the other folks on the project, know exactly what's going on at all times. I really, really appreciate you taking that extra bit of time to do that, Carol. It means a lot to me. So you can see the difference there, right? It's specific. I tell her how it impacts me, what it means. And I think that's the way to do it, right? Make it sincere. Make it feel like you actually put some thought into it. And make it personalized. Again, if you're just recognizing a whole team or a whole group of people, it's not going to mean as much. So make it sincere, make it personalized, right? I think the next one is be strategic about this. And you might think, well, how can I use recognition and be strategic? And what I mean by that is, if you were working with someone, an employee, a friend, someone, and you want to help them grow in a specific area, recognition can be a really, really impactful tool to help folks. So if you're constantly bringing positive attention to something that someone's doing, where they're getting out of their comfort zone, where they're adding value, when they're doing something special, they're going to want to continue to do those things and continue to do them well, right? So I'm sure you guys have all heard the old saying, the behaviors you recognize, you start seeing more of those, right? So the more I recognize a particular behavior, the more of that behavior I see. So if I continuously recognize you for attendance, showing up when you need to, you're going to continue to want to come in on time because you're going to want to chase that feeling. So again, think about with the different areas of your friends, your employees' lives that you want to see that maybe they can grow and get better at. Don't be afraid to recognize those things when you see even little tiny progress or wins towards those directions. It's going to mean a lot to them. It's going to continue to help them want to chase that feeling. And then I said it a minute ago, and I truly believe it. The last one I think is don't feel like you can over-recognize. I truly believe it is impossible to overuse recognition as long as it's sincere, personalized, and you've done it with good intentions. The more you recognize folks, the more success you're going to see, the more trust you're going to build, etc. And I think, there's some really cool benefits as well as the person giving recognition, right? So I'm sure we'll talk about what are the benefits of getting recognition, but what are the benefits for you as the person who's going to be giving recognition to someone? And 4 things come to mind for me when I think about the benefits. These are the benefits that I've seen over and over and over again in my career and the different teams that I've led. And so four things that really come to mind. Number 1 is it's a really, really great way to build culture. So giving recognition freely is a fantastic culture builder, right? And every one of my teams I've ever managed, I wanted to make recognition a key routine, something that I led the charge with, something that I did frequently, and in turn expected of my team. So the more I recognize my team, the more they start to recognize each other. And it's funny, this built such a strong culture because recognition was just freely given, right? And we celebrated each other's wins as often as we could. It wasn't siloed, it was collaborative. And we got in that rhythm of just showing appreciation. And it really, really helped build some amazing cultures. I think another one that goes hand in hand with that is it really helps to build trust. And when you recognize this, you'll realize recognition can actually help you build relationships and trust really well, because when you recognize someone, they start to let their guard down, right? And they start to realize that you're not there to put them down or compete with them. That's a big one, right? And I found that it shows people you can be selfless, right? Which is a really great trust builder. So I've used it for years to build trust, and it works. So that's why I think it's such a great benefit. I think another one too, and I mentioned a little bit of it a moment ago, is you can increase the desired results, right? So the more I give someone recognition about something specific, the more of that behavior I continue to see. I've seen it time and time again. So for example, if I keep recognizing Tony for delivering really good PowerPoint presentations that are visually stunning, Tony's going to keep trying to make impactful presentations, and he wants to feel that over and over again, right? As humans, it feels good to get recognized. So we are going to continue to do that again, right? That's just how it works. So I think that's another great way to, increase desired results. Okay, so now that we talked about some of the benefits of giving recognition, let's talk some of the benefits of receiving it, because, there are lots of benefits, but I think a couple that stand out to me. One is confidence. The times that I've received impactful recognition, it has helped build my confidence over and over and over again. And it really, really works, right? When someone can pause for a second and say, "Hey, Austin, what you're doing is awesome, and I really appreciate it," that feels amazing, and it builds my confidence. It shows me that I can add value and that I can continue to do more things like this, right? So it really, really builds confidence, right? Because I'm going to chase that feeling. Another benefit, right? It's a great way to give feedback on performance, right? I think we have these built-in mechanisms for performance feedback, the end of the year calls, the quarterly kind of check-ins, but I think this is another way to do that even more frequently, and it's a way to give people instant feedback on how their performance is. removes any kind of confusion and helps folks understand really where they stand, and it helps them know they're adding value. So you might think, great, I understand the benefits of giving and getting it, but like, how do I get better myself at recognition? And I'll tell you, I don't think anyone is born being an amazing recognition master, right? Someone who's just so good at it. I know I wasn't. It's taken years to get better at it and perfect it. And I've really kind of thought about the things that I've done and boiled it down to 3 things. So number 1, it's make a habit. Number 2, it's schedule it. And then I think number 3 is be selfless. So I'll start with make it a habit. So just with any habit, the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? So the more you recognize folks around you, the easier it will get. You'll discover the best way to deliver impactful recognition. Just like with anything, repetition leads to results. So make it a habit. Don't just do it infrequently. Don't do it, just do it when you have to. Do it all the time. Every week. It would be my best recommendation. The next one would be schedule it. So, right, you want to make it a habit, so schedule it. So for the last 4 years of my career, I've had monthly reminders about recognition, right? You guys know I have ADHD and I can't remember shit. But I knew recognition was important for my leadership. So I made reminders on my calendar to remember to recognize those around me. So for the last couple of years when I was managing 3 different teams, I had 3 different calendar reminders on my calendar each month. And the reminders would allow me to take 15 to 20 minutes to find someone on each of those teams to recognize, right? It just was pre-built into my schedule. I couldn't get away from it. It was always going to pop up, so I knew it was important. And it really helped me. So I didn't have to try to remember to do it. It was on my calendar. So scheduling it can be a really, really great way to do it. So what I'm not saying is scheduling a specific message to a person, right? Because that's not really sincere, right? You can't assume what's going to happen in the future or predict. But what I would say is be intentional and say, hey, this week I want to recognize someone from my team. Put that on the calendar. The next week, maybe it's this week I want to recognize someone that I work with. Great, put it on the calendar. So then you've got kind of a theme of recognition and you'll go in there, think of something specific. So the last one is being selfless. I think this is a really important one. It might be basic to some or obvious to others, but for me, I think it's really important. It's that when you're giving recognition, this is not a selfish act. This is a selfless act. So what can you do to be selfless? This isn't a way to make yourself look better. This isn't a way to get something from someone. This is a way to help bless someone, to help someone be better, to support someone. Don't make it about you or what you can get out of it, because if that's your reason for doing it, you failed already and you shouldn't give a recognition, right? You shouldn't do it. It's going to be insincere. So again, make it a habit. Do it every week. Schedule it. Put it on that calendar because that really helps me. And be selfless about it. Think about what can I do to bless someone today? Not what can I get out of this? What can I do to recognize and make myself look good? Because again, that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to help someone out, to make someone else better. So we've talked about how to get better at recognition. We've talked a little bit about the benefits of giving and getting recognition. I want to wrap up with a story. So this one, I'll take you back. This is probably 2017, 2016. And, I'm working at a large bank, and I'll tell you, I haven't always been a confident communicator. In fact, there's been times where I was the opposite, right? I was young, I was insecure. Maybe I didn't think I was the best communicator. And I remember specifically a situation where I was working at that large bank and I was a branch manager and I had goals of becoming a district leader. I was constantly finding ways to stand out, making an impact with the hopes of securing that promotion. And, the district leader I worked for at the time, he was aware of my goals and he actually allowed me to run point on some communication to the whole district. This was probably about 15, 20 branches, and each branch had, 10 to 15 people in it. So, quite a few people. And he allowed me to send out weekly emails about an initiative that we had. And I did my best to encourage engagement. I spent a lot of time drafting these emails, rewriting them, asking for feedback from the people within my branch. I think I even asked my wife at the time who worked at the company for feedback. So I really took this seriously and wanted to get, people to engage with the email and understand the information. But more importantly, I wanted the communication to be effective, right? And, I thought I was doing okay, but I really never got any feedback from my boss. But one day I'll never forget, I was at a volunteer event with a few other district leaders, and we had an opportunity to chat. And one of the district leaders there, she was my favorite. I got to be honest with you. Her name was Ariel. Ariel was a 1 in a million leader. I still talk about Ariel with my wife to this day. She made a huge impact on both of us. And what I loved about Ariel was she not only was she incredibly driven, she was inspirational, but she was like a recognition pro. She had risen through the ranks, and so she knew the struggles, and she more importantly knew the value in recognizing folks that were going above and beyond or doing something special. So at the event, the topic of Austin came up. I don't know how, but we were kind of talking about my work and kind of my goals of becoming a district leader. And in front of the group, Ariel said something that I'll never forget. She said, "Man, Austin is one of the best at communicating. He does an awesome job in all of his written emails." And when I heard her say that, I got the biggest smile. Something I had kind of felt insecure about, something that I wasn't sure was working, but that I was putting a lot of effort into, just got called out. And, I would guess if I was to call Ariel up today, she probably wouldn't even remember that situation, right? It was so normal for her to give recognition freely, but it made a huge impact on me. From that day forward, I knew that I could be an effective communicator. I knew I needed to chase that. So I continued to spend time crafting really good, effective emails, phone calls, whatever it was, right? I really wanted to be an effective communicator. And it just reminded me anytime I was feeling insecure, hey, there's someone out there that I respect who thinks I've got value in this. I can continue to get better. So for years and years and years, I've thought about that comment, that recognition that she gave me. I think Ariel is one of the best when it comes to recognition. And so, I owe a lot of my success to her. And hopefully when you hear this story, you realize even a small moment, small comment said in passing can have a huge impact on folks. So my challenge as we wrap up is I want you to take this week and I want you to think of someone you could recognize, right? I want you to make it personalized, sincere, purposeful. And I want you to give them some recognition. Right? Whether that's an email saying thank you, whether that's using the internal recognition system at your company, whether that's a text or a phone call or a social media shout out, I don't care what it is. I want you to take some time, find someone to recognize and make their week. Not only are you going to feel great about doing it and you're going to get the benefits of giving recognition, but more importantly, it's going to help someone continue to get better, continue to find success in their career. So hopefully you got some value out of my thoughts on recognition. And I want to say thank you so much for listening. Make it a great day. The Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.